Welcome to the Perrysburg Podcast, episode 79. I'm your host, Perrysburg resident Kim Newlove. The Perrysburg Podcast is an informational podcast for prospective, new, and current Perrysburg, Ohio residents. We talk about what's in Perrysburg and why people like to live here. Our website is perrysburgpodcast.com. Today's episode is an interview with Father Matt Wahlgren from St. Timothy's Episcopal Church, which you can find at 871 East Boundary Street, Perrysburg, Ohio. Their website is saint-timothy.net. That's saint, all spelled out, SAINT-timothy.net. This episode is part of a series. I've been running a series of interviews with faith community leaders here in Perrysburg throughout the life of the podcast. Places of worship are important to Perrysburg residents. So if you're looking for a church, you will learn what St. Tim's offers today. To hear the other episodes in this series, check out episodes 30, 34, 40, and 62. Episode 30 introduced the series and the topic of faith community leaders. Episode 34 was my interview with Pastor Mark Wentz from Lutheran Church of the Master. Episode 40 was an interview with Pastor Dan Gildner from Grace Church Perrysburg. And episode 62 was an interview with Pastor Melanie Forey from Zor Lutheran Church. I'll put that list in the show notes on perrysburgpodcast.com. Let me tell you what's coming up in my interview with Father Matt today, then I'll roll the interview. First, we get to know Father Matt. We discuss his South Toledo roots, what brought him to Perrysburg, how he met his wife, his educational path, his work experiences, and advice for young people who might be interested in becoming a pastor too. Then we talk about St. Tim's worship services, youth activities, and more. And finally, we end with a conversation about Timothy's Perrysburg Foundation, whose mission is to feed, clothe, and fulfill. And stay tuned until the very, very end of this episode because I will play a soundbite from our mic check before the interview. You will want to hear this because it's a little bit of humor. When I asked him about his favorite pizza, I loved his answer, and you might too. So, without further ado, here's my conversation with Father Matt Wahlgren, and stay tuned until the very, very end. Thanks. Hi, Father Matt. Welcome to the Perrysburg Podcast.
Thank you, and thank you for having me.
My pleasure. I understand you're the new kid on the block here at St. Tim's, so tell me, what brought you to Perrysburg?
Perrysburg was always, in a sense, home. I grew up in the Toledo area, South Toledo, born and raised, and part of being in Toledo for me, when I became 18, Toledo became too small, and I wanted to experience the world, and I went to Florida, I went to Chicago, I went to Alaska and did some commercial fishing. And it was in Alaska that I realized Toledo's home, and I couldn't wait to get back there.
Sweet story. I've never been to Alaska. That's actually on my bucket list. I'd like to go this year. What made you interested in fishing in Alaska?
Fear, actually. One of the most terrifying things when you are in your early 20s graduating with a Bible degree is everybody says, what are you going to do with the rest of your life? And if you don't have an answer to that, sometimes you run off to Alaska and you do commercial fishing.
All right. I hadn't known that before. I'll have to bank that in my mental checklist for things to do if I ever become a pastor. I've got to ask, were you interested in fishing even before you ran off to Alaska?
Oh my goodness, no. I hate the feeling of slimy fish. They're floppy and they're weird. But when you do commercial fishing, you have like 4 layers of gloves on because the water's so cold in Alaska. So anyways, I didn't have to feel their sliminess or necessarily all their floppiness. And it was just work, and I could process in the background while working and making enough money to ease into ministry.
Got it. You went and got your degree so that you could become a minister first, and then you did all these travels, right? Florida, Chicago, Alaska. Is that right?
Actually, I went to Florida first. So I applied to Moody Bible Institute in Chicago, and upon turning in my application, drove to Florida because I didn't know if I was going to get in. with one of my best friends, and we painted houses until I heard the acceptance letter came in. And so we moved back north. And then I headed off to Chicago for my undergrad in biblical studies.
Very interesting. I know there aren't a whole lot of young people interested in going into becoming a pastor or a priest these days. So I just got to ask you real quick, what advice do you have for a young person who might be interested in also becoming a man of the cloth?
First off, I would say, for me, this is the best job in the world. I love what I do day in and day out, whether it's community engagements, whether it's preaching or hearing somebody's heart. It is the best job. But I think being able to say or see that like those are those pieces of it. And there is this spot of wanting to grow closer to God over and over again, that to listen to that inside of yourself. If you're listening to that and you feel called into this, take the next step and then take the next step. That's what got me to this place. I never thought I would be an Episcopal priest. I never thought I would wear a collar or a robe. Actually, even in undergrad, I would tell people on the regular, hymns just make me yawn. I wanted some like rock and roll Jesus music. And now I'm here. I went last night to Chanted Compline, and it was just beautiful and soul touching and not at all where I thought I would be, but always taking the next right step that I think God has for us through prayer, through reading, meditation, through seeking advice. I ended up in a really beautiful place that I have no regrets about being.
Thanks for that pep talk for the young people. I appreciate that because I think it's the heart of the community, really finding these churches and, like finding a church home, I think is so important. And I think if you can speak to young people who are at that point in their life where they're trying to decide what to do with their life, it's nice for them to hear from you because it sounds like it wasn't your first choice, right?
No, I couldn't even pronounce Episcopal when this started. And, if you're a young person wondering what to do with the rest of your life, nobody has it figured out yet. Take a deep breath, name the things that you're in love with that give you life, and sit down and share those with somebody else, and see what really sparks inside of you. That's what really happened with me. I got to sit down with a wonderful pastor, and he asked me all the questions and led me to a place where I could actually name what was beautiful in life that was a passion inside of me and set me free to run after it. So do that. Run after your passions, find out what they are, and have somebody in your life that actually challenges you to do it.
Thank you for those words of wisdom. I'm picturing you a young person. You've just graduated. What is the name of the degree that you got?
So from Moody Bible Institute, it was a Bachelor's of Arts in Biblical Studies. I went back and got a Master's of Divinity from North Park Theological Seminary in Chicago as well.
And after Chicago, your next move was Alaska, right?
Yes, after the Moody time in Alaska, or the Moody time in Chicago. So I went back for my master's later, and mostly online.
Oh, okay. So Chicago, Alaska, back to Chicago, right?
Chicago, Alaska, Toledo, with intermittent stops in Chicago.
Okay. Now, I'm just picturing you as this, graduate with your bachelor's degree. And then you said you went to Alaska and then Toledo. But did you do your master's online?
Yes.
Oh, I see.
So I took 5 years to get a 3-year degree online, and some of it was intensive. So I drove to Chicago for 2 weeks of intensive Greek, and it was a lot.
Wow. I think my pastor also learned Greek as well, Pastor Mark Wentz over at Lutheran Church of the Master. Is that something that all pastors have in common, learning Greek?
I'm not sure if all pastors have it in common, but it is so helpful. When you learn a language, you also learn a culture. And to learn the culture that Jesus was a part of in that Koine, that Koine Greek, or that just normal spoken Greek of everyday people, you really start to encounter this is what it was like then. And that's when the world of the New Testament really opens up sometimes, is when you can picture and hear and get the nuance of the language.
I am fascinated by the geography of the Bible. I think it's very interesting. So I feel like when you learn a language, you also learn about the geography too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You learn the geography, the social class structure, which groups use which language and how they're using it. And it's just always fascinating. One of the things that's always fascinating to me with it is like the idea of the way we might say righteousness or justice, like the justice of God. And that it's the same word as righteousness. It's the same idea as goodness. And it doesn't have that negative sort of maybe connotation that we would have when we talk about justice in a legal system. It has this feeling of the right thing coming about in the world. And for me, that changes a lot of when I read scripture and a lot of my preaching. It isn't about God's going to come and do justice. It's about God's going to come and set things right and work with us to do it. And that's something really to celebrate. And this one small piece of how original languages and cultures has changed my view of the world and God.
Context is what you're talking about, I feel like, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Context is huge.
The words that we're reading translated into English in an American English Bible are taken from Greek, right? Because wasn't the Bible originally written somewhat in Greek?
Yeah, the New Testament is mostly a Greek document. Old Testament is Hebrew.
Of course.
And at Moody, I took my Hebrew courses and very different languages. And even seeing how words move from Hebrew in the Old Testament to Greek has one layer of context to it. And then from that Greek to English has layers of context as well. And as a Bible nerd, that's like my playground. So I love getting into that. I don't know, people have different things they're passionate about. And mine happens to be nuances of old languages that we don't really use much anymore.
Nuance is another word that's good. Yeah, I think that when things get lost in translation, enough said.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
It's fun to find those things that are lost.
Yeah, you can really talk about it. You can react to that as a whole entire sermon, like this is how it reads, but what it really means is this. And you're the person that gets to explain that to a whole group of people who are eager to learn about it, which is cool.
It's really cool.
Yeah. One of the things that is missing from the timeline that I'm trying to construct as we're getting to know each other is where your wife comes into the picture. How'd you meet her?
Oh, my goodness. I moved back to Toledo from Alaska. Didn't know what I was really doing with my life. I was working in a coffee shop, and I called my pastor friend, and I said, I feel like I'm just wasting away here. I've got this degree, but I'm not doing good outside of a smiling face handing somebody a cup of coffee. And he said, I've got this job for you. And it was the beginning of Food for Thought Toledo. And I don't know if your listeners or you know much about it, but at the time it was a food pantry in a church, and it was a picnic in downtown Toledo. And he said, I'm looking for somebody to run these programs and to put together a mobile food pantry in Toledo. And I was excited. I said, yes, let's do it. I started with that job, and it was on a Friday night. We're packing peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. We had to make hundreds and hundreds of these things, and we had the greatest time doing it. We were supposed to have somebody speak about coming out of an unhoused situation, and she couldn't make it. And so someone had to fill the spot that people were coming to hear someone speak in. And someone became me. And so I told people about my views of poverty and what we were trying to do as a nonprofit to bridge the gap between affluence and poverty through relationship. And so as I spoke about that, there was this beautiful woman sitting and listening. I can picture it today. She was sitting on the floor to the left. And after I talked, somebody said, oh, you have to meet somebody. And it was this beautiful meeting. We sat, we talked. She went to her car and she was like, I think I met somebody. I went home and I was like, I told my parents, like, I'm this, 20 something. I'm like, I think I met somebody. And then we didn't see each other for like a month because she had these like car issues. And it was like, there was something there, but what was it? And as soon as she came back, I was like, we have to figure out how to make this really, or like, what's the next step,
Yeah, how do we make this a regular thing?
Yes. And you can't be the assistant director of a nonprofit and ask out your volunteers. So it was tricky to get a whole group of people to go out to, a coffee shop after lunch packing so I could ask her to go to the coffee shop with everybody else. And the rest is history, that we are still deeply in love today, through the good times and the bad times and all the warts in our own lives. She makes me a better person every day. And we have 3 beautiful daughters together, and a dog and 2 cats and a fish named Finley.
Thank you for telling me about your story. And I think that's really cool that you have this story that you can talk about. And she was part of kind of like your ministry and something that you enjoyed doing. That was really cool.
Yes. And I mean, honestly, she was one of those people in my life that could see the calling and say, like, you need to go for your master's. And I couldn't have done that without her. And she was the breadwinner the whole time. She took care of everything coming in as I held our infant daughter, Isabel, and read Greek to her and read theological books to her. That was the beginning of family life.
Is that how you got your kids to take naps? Reading Greek to them? No, I'm just kidding.
No, absolutely, yes.
No, that's cool. Some people would say that reading from the Bible puts them to sleep. And, literally, you were probably reading the Bible in Greek to her, and it may have made her sleepy. So kind of poking fun at you here, Father Matt.
No, that's okay. Priests need to be poked fun at sometimes.
Your people too. Yeah. Thank you again for telling me about how you met your wife and your educational journey. What was your first placement in an Episcopal church?
Actually, so before my first placements, I was an intern here before I came back. So I knew a lot of this congregation, and it was about 8 years ago. And Father Jeff was here, and he did just this wonderful job of saying, I'm going to set you free to do things that are on your heart to do. And if you make a mistake, I've got your back. And so I got to do really wonderful ministries here. I got to tell, as an intern, I was able to sit with the congregation and talk about LGBTQ inclusion. And, knowing that this can be a conversation full of landmines for some people. And he set me free to do that work here. And it was wonderful. And it shaped me as a person. It shaped the congregation. And as an intern, I got to learn that. My first calling was then to Fremont. So St. Paul's Episcopal Church in Fremont, Ohio. For someone who left Toledo thinking it was just a small city and wanted something bigger, I think God had a little chuckle in sending me to Fremont, and a learning experience, because that little city, it had an impact on me. I loved seeing the people and the way that city operated. It will always have a place in my heart.
Thank you for talking about that. This is then your second call or placement, correct?
This is second call, yes.
That's got to be hard to leave the people who welcome you to your first call and then going to the second call, but yet it's coming home. What was that like for you, making that transition?
Oh, man, I'm already going to start tearing up. The people at St. Paul's and in Fremont, they were the most loving, kind people. They allowed me to make mistakes, and they followed me into crazy, weird ministries and just cheered me on the whole time. So they will always have that place. I'm so grateful for them. And coming back to the Toledo area and coming back to Perrysburg is a beautiful gift as well. This place welcoming me in, my first Sunday here, it was crazy. It was the worst first Sunday ever. I crashed my car and missed the first service.
Whoa.
And so made it to the second service. And immediately people were just like they knew the story. They were welcoming and caring, made sure that I was okay. And we had just beautiful worship together. We did a coffee hour afterwards. After every, St. Tim's service, there's a coffee hour. And we have times of fellowship and sweets and the coffee is pretty good. It's still church coffee. Eventually, maybe we'll get to where we have some really great Maddie and Bella's, or was it Iron City's made here in Perrysburg? Is that another coffee roaster here?
I think it's called Iron Bean.
Iron Bean, that's
right?
it. Yeah. So, anyways, it was just great and welcoming. And I knew right away, like, this is church family and church home. And so to go from a church home and already to feel part of a new church home on the first Sunday with tragedy and craziness as a part of it was I think that sign and something that God does for us, it did for me.
Yes. What a story. I appreciate your dedication. You got into a car accident, must have walked away, of course, and then still showed up for work.
Melanie, my wife, had to drive from Fremont to pick me up because I totaled the car, and drove me to the church and then drove back home to pick up our children. So from Fremont to Perrysburg, back to Fremont to get kids back to Perrysburg was her morning. Somehow it all worked out. I still remember seeing her that first Sunday as her and the kids come in, because they didn't make the beginning of the service. But at communion, they come in as I'm doing what we call the Great Thanksgiving. So as I'm praying over the bread and the wine, that God is a part of them and makes them different and set apart for us, I saw them coming in the back door. And I remember just being like, now it's right. And then the person who was doing the live stream was like, I could not see your family come in, but I could see your face when they came in, that everything changed. And that is true. My family makes everything change.
Oh, I'm sure they light you up. Absolutely. That's wonderful. I'm so glad that it seems like all your time after that first day has been a lot better, a lot smoother. Would you agree?
No, it's church life. And when churches are full of people and people make things not smooth, which is a glorious thing, we've had hard conversations around here and we've worked through them. And this is a testament, I think, to doing things right, is that we don't agree on everything. We're in a church where we have disagreements, we have problems, and we have issues, but we come together. We worship together. We love each other. And in a time and a place where we tend to separate at the first instance of disagreements, the thing that makes St. Tim's special, and I think it makes a lot of churches special, is that we're held together by something so much greater. And we're able to see that around here and know that we're not all going to agree on the same things, but we are all in agreement that love is the way forward, that Jesus Christ is going to save us, and it's God's work that saves us and cares for us. And if we can rely on that, we can put up with the brokenness that we bring to all the relationships.
Life is messy.
Life is messy.
I like that you pushed back on me when I said, everything's probably been great since that first day with the car wreck. But you're right, life is messy, and you're helping people focus on what's really important in spite of all of life's challenges.
Yes, absolutely. And it is also a testament to the people around here. St. Tim's is full of some amazingly talented people. I've got, people that are part of this church that are lawyers and doctors and professors that are smarter than I am and can lead a business meeting way better than I can. And so I'm intimidated a lot of times here, and every one of them sits down with me and goes, yeah, we know you didn't go to school for this, but you did go to school to lead us towards Christ. And that makes a beautiful team. So yeah, we have our challenges, issues, and we have just tons of people who are willing to put their talent, skills, and abilities towards God. And it makes for a really beautiful and wonderful place to be.
I love that you talked about the people first. That's beautiful. Back when I was growing up, my dad used to do this thing with his hands. And I'm sure you know this thing where you say, this is the church, this is the steeple. You open it up and you see all the people, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah. And really, that's what the church is. It's the people. So thank you for starting with talking about the people here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you tell me, for anybody who's looking to move to Perrysburg or is brand new here or is looking for a new church home, even though they've lived here for a while, what does St. Tim's have to offer other than an awesome congregation?
St. Tim's, if you're unfamiliar with the Episcopal Church, St. Timothy's is a liturgical kind of traditional congregation when it comes to worship style. So hymns, we have what we call liturgy every Sunday. Sometimes people think liturgy is something other than what it is. Liturgy is the work of the people. It means church doesn't happen without people showing up. They're an integral part of the service, and there's calls and responses through service. Most Sundays we receive Holy Communion. And I think some people will jokingly say the Episcopal Church is like, it's Catholic light. Honestly, it's not a horrible description. We have found a love of the liturgy and lets that point us towards God. At the same time as we found our spot of social justice in the world, of standing up for people who are minority groups or outcasts or haven't been correctly loved by the church. And so we take very seriously the inclusion of our LGBTQ siblings. And so that is sort of that give and take of where we are as a church. And so if people were looking for a church that was open and affirming, caring about neighbors, serious about social justice, this is the growing part. I've been here for, I think, 8 months, and we haven't started our Bible studies yet. And there's a part of me that's so excited to start them in 2025, to start to look into what does the Bible really have to say about social justice and inclusion, and how do we live that out in the world? Is a deep calling that I'm really looking forward to in 2025.
Thank you for talking about that, because some churches choose not to openly discuss such matters.
Openness, I think, has to be our way forward. And sometimes, there will be disagreements that openness leads to. Having the hard conversation in the room is, I want to say always, because I'm, still a millennial that maybe will struggle with words like that. But the way forward has more times than not been choosing the hard path and the hard conversation and having it and being real honest about it. Because when we can be honest with each other, we actually both grow, right? Like that's the one place that everybody grows. I will make the offer that I would make to anybody or to your listeners, that I will buy you a cup of coffee at any time and talk about whatever issues that are on your heart, that you're going through, your questions, your pushbacks against God, the existence of God, or any other thing. I love having those conversations. I love being with people, and I'm also not here to convince anybody that God exists, but to love them the way that I see God loving humanity.
Thank you for that offer. As far as what St. Tim's offers as a church home, I'm sure you have the traditional worship services, right?
Yeah, 8:00 is our spoken liturgy. So it is a little more contemplative. Same sermon, same readings, same basic liturgy as the 10:00, but without music. And it gives us just a little bit more space to be silent, sit with God, and for some people to move on with a Sunday and relaxation. That church is important, but there's a whole day ahead of them. Then we have 10:00, which is full of traditional music. We have a wonderful church choir. We're in the middle of, or actually at the very start of installing a pipe organ. that is going to be a piece of our music ministry going forward, is that traditional music. And it's beautiful. We have a great organist, a great choir, and they make up for all of my bad singing, even when I forget to turn my mic off. And
Nice.
so
When does that get installed?
it looks like our date is going to start over summer, which is great. We'll make it through the Easter season. Easter's so late this year that by the time it's over and Pentecost happens, there will be some construction going on. It's also really great because our choir goes on break for summer. The installation of it will probably wall off the choir pews for a little while. Somehow it fell perfectly in line. And in the fall, you can come and hear hopefully this new and classic organ that's, I think, being married together in a very unique way. Come and hear it. We'll probably have an organ concert and like dedication at some point that hasn't been planned yet.
I have a kiddo that loves music, so I would like to come to that. I'll have to keep in touch just so I can find out about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I understand that music is really important here. We'll get to that in just a minute, but I wanted to finish up with the worship services.
Yeah.
You said Sundays, 8 a.m.
10
and 10 a.m.
And there's children's ministries as a part of that. So during the sermon or during the service, at the 10 a.m. service, we have one classroom that is preschool through second grade, and another classroom that is third through fifth. And then for junior high and high schoolers, we have them actually in the service. And a lot of them are on rotation to what we call acolytes. So they help out with the service. They carry the cross, they carry torches, gospel books, and things. And they meet together after the service at 10 a.m. To go through a lesson, sometimes to do some service projects. They've made blankets that have gone out to families and things together. So that's Sunday mornings.
And you have the live stream too?
Yes, we live stream our 10 a.m. service, and it can be found both on our Facebook page and on our website, which is Saint, spelled out SAINT Timothy.net.
Very good. Thank you. And do you have confirmation classes here too?
We do. What usually ends up for our confirmation, as we get a group of new people that have come into the church, we'll put a class together, or as kids come up and we get a group in that high school age is when we do confirmation. We put a class together. So it's sort of at an as-needed basis. We also have confirmation retreats put on by our diocese at Bellwether Camp and Retreat Center in Wakeman, Ohio, which is an amazing place.
Kids love to travel, get away, do sleepaway activities. So that's what that kind of sounds like, right?
Yeah, and, pet a sheep and a goat and eat really good food. They have everything's like farm to table there. Mm-hmm. So it's really a magical, wonderful place to kind of be and to experience.
Awesome. Thanks for telling me about that. Did I miss anything else on Sundays?
I think that is most of our Sunday events.
Awesome. Now, is there more than one worship leader here, or are you the only pastor?
I would be the only pastor. We currently have, I think, 2 other people trained up as what we call lay readers. So if I go on vacation, it's not like God goes on vacation. They actually step into that role as a officiant of the services, and they can officiate what we call morning prayer and preach. And so we have lay preachers and lay leaders that are a part of the congregation.
Nice to hear that. When Pastor Mark goes on vacation over at Lutheran Church of the Master, often we have a substitute pastor. And if we can't find one of those, then one of our parishioners will preach. But I think we don't have communion if the pastor is on vacation. Is that the same thing here?
Yes, that would be exactly the same thing here, is that we don't normally have communion when I'm on vacation, unless we can, find somebody to fill in that's ordained. I actually really love the morning prayer service. It's in the history of the Episcopal Church and the Anglican Church. So if you don't know, we're Anglicans, and Church of England is the big affiliation. And for the history of our church, morning prayer has actually been the big service with occasional communion services. And so there's a piece that reaches back to our history when we keep that fresh in our minds.
Nice. I like the history lesson. I actually did not
Yeah.
know that. When I step into your sanctuary, it feels like I'm in New England. So I know you said England, but
Yeah.
anyways, I feel like there's a little flavor in the sanctuary. That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice. What haven't we covered that you would like to talk about to give people who are thinking of choosing St. Tim's as their church home?
Just last night, we had what's the service is called Compline. It's really like the bedtime prayers of the church.
Hmm.
So it's 8 o'clock, and it was chanted. So our cantor and a group of people he brought together. So there's these four people chanting these prayers, and it was incredible. Candle lit. We all have flashlights so we can still read and participate, but just a beautiful service. And that happens the second Tuesday of every month. It's also live streamed. So if you're wondering, what is this weird service? I would say hop on the website, sttimothy's.net, and check out the Chanted Compline service. It really does create a sacred pause, a moment for us to just breathe and be. And in that space of pause is sometimes a space where we can feel the presence of God a little better.
Is the chanting in English?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Sometimes there's an anthem that has some Latin or something else in it that, like, that's beautiful. I have no idea what they are saying. It does a spiritual work still, but the majority of it is chanted in English.
Got it. I went to a friend's wedding at a Catholic church once. It was 2 hours long for this wedding service, and there was chanting, but it was not in English, and I couldn't figure out what they were saying. But, the mystery surrounding not knowing a language, but it still being beautiful has value too.
Yes. And the service for Compline is only about a half hour. So it's not a long service, but it is a great spot. We also have every Wednesday at 7 p.m., we have a healing service. And so that is Holy Communion, spoken liturgy. We have a couple of readings, a sermonette of sorts, and anointing and prayers for healing.
I've got to ask, if somebody is not Episcopalian, are they invited to join these services too?
Absolutely. Everybody's welcome to join any of the services. And our communion table is fully open. You don't have to be an Episcopalian or know all of your thoughts on what you think about God to come and kneel and receive communion, because we believe that God is a part of those things, and we believe God is doing a work in you and doing a work in this world, whether we know how to name it or not.
I appreciate the inclusion and the intentionality with that statement. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I feel invited.
You are. Although I know
Thank
that
you.
you have a pastor in a wonderful church to attend already.
Thank you. Yes, but I still do want to hear the organ, and I do want to check out this. How do you call the chanting ceremony or the chanting service?
Chanted Compline.
Compline. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I want to check it out. And you said that it was on your Facebook page.
Yes.
And then the website. So
yes.
Yeah, I'll check it out.
Very easy to find.
I got to do my research here. Father Matt, I don't want to forget anything. Are there any other services or opportunities to come into your building that I'm missing?
Yes, actually, we have first Sunday of every month for the 10 o'clock services, intergenerational worship. So we all worship together, families and all. The service is tailored to work for kids as well as everybody else. And so we want to make sure that we have those times together in worship because we value families. We value everybody that comes through the doors. And the other thing I wanted to highlight is we have a youth night on the first Wednesday of every month. And that is, kids, they're going to play games, ages or grades 6th grade and up, with, 2 parent or 2 adult volunteers that help out in the room. And they play games, Bible lesson, get to know each other, fellowship, and then drawing closer to God through a lesson.
Youth group, kind of, right?
Absolutely, youth group.
I loved youth group when I was growing up. I loved it when we would play hide and seek in the church. It was so fun.
That happens fairly often. And then we have to make sure we lock all the doors to make sure that the kids can't get into doors that they're not supposed to.
Yes, yes. That's fun. Going back to the intergenerational worship, do you just mean that there's no Sunday school that day and therefore the children are part of the service? I mean, what does that look like? How is that different?
There is no Sunday school that day, but it is different in that kids help to lead. They're learning the liturgy. Some of the kids will help lead with either the prayers. We already have several of them that are acolytes. Usually our acolytes are the teens that are part of the church that are in the service anyways. And this ends up being a spot where they can interact with some of the younger students and teach them how to acolyte as well. The sermon is not a sermon just for adults. I will tailor something for the children of the congregation. And oftentimes the adults will say, I really got something out of that, because like it's like reading a children's book. Sometimes something can't be said as deeply as it can if you break it down for children. And I think sometimes that's the love of Christ, is that thing that breaks down at that level so beautifully.
Thank you for sharing that. At my church, Lutheran Church of the Master, we have the children's message, and I swear I get as much out of it, if not more, than the kids do. Because I do like how they break it down into something that's just a little bit more relatable on a human level, instead of that higher level of thinking where, you're thinking of your afterlife and heaven and, what does this mean for me in the big picture? It's just, I don't know, it just keeps it kind of small and simple.
Yeah, I think also it almost has to be more thought out. If you're saying it to a child, that you have to really have things boiled down to a really beautiful spot. That it's more work sometimes to put that message together, but it is more meaningful in that it really has to be kind of crisp for children. And oftentimes it changes me before I say it, right? Like the best sermons are the ones that I think affect the person saying it. It's not just a teaching moment, but preaching is a lived experience throughout the week. I usually live the experience a week before the rest of the congregation hears the sermon and is challenged to live it.
Nice. The last children's message that I heard was one of our church members talking about drawing a picture of her cat. And she kept trying to draw this picture, and the kids were guessing what it was supposed to be, even though, it looked more like a deer or a dog or a whale or something. And she said, just like I'm constantly trying to perfect this picture of my cat, God's always trying to encourage you to be the best version of yourself. And that really just hit home. I think any kid can understand that, and really any adult can understand that too.
Yeah. What a beautiful message too.
I really liked it. Yeah. And I think it's really cool that the services that you're talking about, the intergenerational worship, are on that Facebook page, like you said, and your website. So somebody can experience that before they come here and try it in person.
Yes, absolutely. Any of the first Sunday of the month ones for the last 8 months, you can go and look and see what we're doing on those first Sundays and what intergenerational worship looks like at St. Tim's.
Love that. Yeah. Father Matt, I understand that there's some really exciting things happening here with a certain kitchen and the St. Tim's Clothesline Ministry and also music. So tell me, where would you like to start?
Well, first of all, I want to let you know all of those, which are deep ministries of the church, are a part of a separate nonprofit now called the Timothy's Perrysburg Foundation. Very interwoven with the church, but its own separate thing. And the whole goal of that is to clothe, to feed, and to fulfill. We know that we've always, since humanity, we've had needs of food. We've had needs of being clothed and cared for in those ways. Sometimes we often miss that we need that fulfillment that only arts can bring. And so those are the three areas we really hope to impact in our community. The kitchen, I'll start there, is a rescue kitchen. So we are rescuing food that would be heading towards the trash heaps. We know that that's actually the trash that wasted food creates has really awful impacts on our environment. It's just doing horrible things, as well as being wasteful in a way that we can certainly be helpful. And so we are rescuing food from various places. And also, if you're a listener and you know of a place that food can be rescued at a pretty large scale, we would love to hear from you, because we are building out this rescue network. I have numbers here, and I'm going to panic and not be able to see them. But I think we've rescued over 2,000 pounds of food already and gotten over 250 servings out to the community. And we've only been making food for maybe 2 months.
Somebody once cautioned me never to do math while live on a podcast episode because it'll make you nervous. So I respect that you had that moment of panic. Like, I know the number's here somewhere, but I'm not going to be able to find it when I need it. So I get it. But that is a huge amount of food, even 100 pounds of food, rescuing the food so that it can go to somebody who needs it. That is very respectful. I respect what you're doing. Yes. And I saw the kitchen on the tour today as I was right before the interview here. And it is a very nice kitchen. It reminds me of my elementary school and the kitchen that they had there. It is commercial, right? Commercial grade equipment.
Yes, it is commercial grade, and it's made to, our goal is soups, frozen soups. So when we get the rescued ingredients, we're coming up with a good recipe. And if we have enough, we have this thing called a tilt skillet that you can make like 40 gallons of soup at once.
Wow.
And so we can make this mass quantity of soup, put it into a blast chiller to get it cooled down enough that we can handle it, and then get it into 32-ounce servings. Once it's in those 32-ounce containers, we freeze it solid, and we distribute it in that way. Those can go in a microwave, the soup containers, so we can distribute a meal to somebody. And we've extended the life of this food that would be heading towards the trash exponentially.
Wow, that's amazing. I know that you're calling for listeners to donate food items if they have mass quantities, access to mass quantities of food that's going to be expiring soon. But how else can people in Perrysburg help you with this food ministry?
The couple of big things, we're looking to hire a chef within the coming year. One is monetary donations are always accepted to help get us to that point. We want to have professional chef-inspired soups coming out of this kitchen. The best quality things are what we were putting forward. So that is one of them. So we're rescuing food, but we are making gourmet quality soups. That is the hope of this kitchen. The other thing is we'll be building up a volunteer network. And so if you look up Timothy's Perrysburg Foundation online, you'll see places where you'll be able to volunteer. And I believe if it's not set up yet, it will be very soon to sign up for newsletters from them.
Very good. Anything else on the topic of food before we move on to the clothing?
The other piece on the topic of food is we do soup suppers on Wednesday nights at the church. The soup from that is coming directly from that kitchen with those rescued ingredients. And we eat together, church folk, other folk that are just in need, people who drive by and just see the sign, that it's a spot for us to get to know each other, to eat together and to care for one another. And my whole family comes out and we all eat together and we get to know new people in the community in really wonderful ways.
I love that. That is so inclusive of just anybody that drives by and sees the sign, anybody in need, anybody at the church. I just love that. It's such a genuine invitation.
Ever since those early days of Food for Thought, I've been impacted on erasing them and us mentalities in giving and in ministry, that if we're going to make food, we should probably eat food. And if we're going to make food, we should probably also, in ways that we can, invite people to help make it with us. With a commercial kitchen, it's been a little different because there's so many scary things, like 40 gallons of soup tilting in this skillet, like vertically is a scary thing if you don't do it right. So does take quite a bit of training in the kitchen to use anything. But we're always looking for people to help in there as well.
Well, thank you for the invitation to join you on Wednesdays for a meal.
Yeah.
Anything else about food before we move on to clothing?
I think that's it for food.
All right. What's going on at St. Tim's with clothing?
Clothing has been a huge ministry here for over a decade and a half, starting off in a small closet with the hopes and dreams of one person in the church saying this, we can impact the community this way, to now our doors are open receiving donations any day of the week. From basically around 7 a.m. to around 9 p.m. You can come, and there's 2 deck boxes at the back doors of our church to donate clothing. It keeps it out of those same trash heaps. It is another piece of rescue programming that helps out, and it really helps out our neighbors as well. We're open on Fridays from 9 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. And we, distribute good quality clothing. Everything that's donated, we go through by hand, look for really good quality things, make sure those are put out and distributed to people in need. We also know of several other communities that can benefit from everything else that's donated. And so things that we can't use or donations we get above and beyond us go both to Salvation Army and Our Earth. As different programs that continue to use and recycle and make use out of all of those clothing items. The other cool thing that we do when we get cashmere and wool sweaters that have holes in them that are no longer good, we have a group of people that take and turn them into mittens. And so those mittens go out. We sent a bunch of them to Ukraine because their winters are cold and there's a need there. They also go out to, our community in different ways.
Very nice. My mom and her friends are part of the Quilting Eagles. So they're Pemberville people, Eastwood High School, the Quilting Eagles, a bunch of retired teachers, right? And in addition to quilting, I believe that they make mittens also out of sweaters, wool sweaters, I believe is what it is. Anyway, she made a pair for me. I don't know if it was from one of my old sweaters or not, but I have a pair of these mittens that you're talking about. They're very warm. So yeah, I think that's very cool that people at your church make those.
It is absolutely incredible. There's a room full of sewing machines, and these people, they get together and they're having a blast and creating mittens at the same time. The community building that happens within service there's nothing like it.
Yes, and the people that are on the receiving end, I'm sure, are very happy.
Yes.
Absolutely. Anything else on the topic of clothing? Does anybody have to show ID, for example, to get access to these resources? I mean, how does somebody that needs the clothing get the clothing?
Just show up. You don't have to prove income. You don't have to prove anything. No ID required. There will be somebody that might take your name, and that is kind of for our tracking purposes only. It's not reported anywhere. After that, it is shopping through what you might need. There's kids' clothing, adult clothing, some professional clothing. So just come, show up. It is there for the community, no matter what your circumstance is. We know that circumstances are actually more complicated than government regulations and other regulations. And so we'll accommodate to all of that.
Thank you for telling me about the clothing ministry. I think I saw a building in the backyard here at St. Tim's, and you told me something about the connection between the clothing ministry and that building. What is going on back there?
Yeah, the building was the old rectory. Rectory is, if you're new to that language, is the house that the priest would live in. That is not the house that I live in, and thank goodness, because it is a construction site right now.
Yes, the windows are boarded up.
Yes. Yeah. And we're expanding the footprint of that and turning the old house into a free clothing store. So the clothing ministry here has grown not just beyond that original closet, but has grown into all of these different rooms of the church. It is beautiful when you walk into St. Tim's and you know that ministry is happening because you see some of the clothing that's out, that's being sorted, and that in our parish hall and in different areas. You know ministry is happening. Also, it would be nice eventually for our parish hall to resemble a parish hall and not a sorting station for clothes. And that's exactly what this is going to be. It's going to be the place for the drop-off of clothes, the sorting of it, and the place where people can go and shop for clothes, not in just a children's classroom that's been converted, but into its own clothing store that adds dignity to the experience of shopping.
Well, it adds a lot of intention to a space, too. As we were walking through the church for a tour, you kept pointing to doors and saying, that's full of clothing, that's full of clothing, that's full of clothing. And I'm like, in the back of my head thinking, boy, this is one successful clothing ministry. And it's all going to go into that former rectory, right?
Yes. And when that opens up, that's another call for volunteerism. If anybody's ever worked with clothing donations, it is actually relatively labor intensive to go through clothing, to sort it into sizes, hang it up, make sure it's good quality. And unfortunately, anytime you ask for clothing donations, sometimes people give things that are not dignified to hand back out to others. And somebody has to sort those things out to make sure what goes out adds that dignity and that love and that care and the respect that we want to make sure that people have when they experience St. Tim's or the Timothy Perrysburg Foundation.
Thank you for telling me a little bit about kind of criteria. You know, if it's something that you're throwing out, then really think about if somebody on the receiving end would feel dignified receiving that. I think that's important because, you know, I think all of us have things that we would like to get rid of, and we just don't know what qualifies.
If you feel like it promotes dignity, right? I've seen jeans that are torn up.
Yeah.
My favorite pair of jeans were torn up, but not donatable. And I knew it. And I honestly would challenge the giver of those items to just ask the question in their heart. Does this add dignity to the world and to others? And if they can answer that as yes, because those are really trendy holy jeans, donate them. And we would love to receive them. And we'll figure out exactly how to get them out to the right place, whether it's on our shelves, whether it's donated to Salvation Army, and where it goes from there. We'll figure out what to do. If there's a question, we'll still receive it and sort it.
I appreciate that. I know you have donation bins for something called Our Earth, right?
Yes.
The letter R and then Earth. And that's the folks who recycle clothing that is inappropriate for you to give through your clothing ministry, correct?
Yeah. Not just the stuff that's inappropriate, but stuff that is just beyond. We happen to be situated in a really wonderful giving community. And sometimes we get more donations here than what is going to fill our racks. So we fill up our racks and we end up giving out to Our Earth. Some of that clothing from them actually goes overseas to others and to different places. And they will actually pay us for some of it to help us with our overhead costs. It's not a lot, but it does help us out a little bit. So even clothing that goes above and beyond helps us with our mission to continue.
Good to know. I personally will take my unusable clothing to a dumpster. It's a green dumpster. They recycle clothing. It's in the Perrysburg High School parking lot. I don't know if you're aware of this, and they also, I believe, have one at the Wood County Recycling Center on Lime City Road. It's like a recycling station, not a center. And it's by Perrysburg Township Police. And they have these green dumpsters and they say, just put your stuff in a garbage sack, put it in the dumpster, and we'll find a way to recycle it. That makes me feel better about, tossing out my sweat-stained, favorite t-shirt that I used to wear to the gym. Because I don't want to put it in the trash if somebody can use it for something, animal bedding or whatever they do with it.
Yes, absolutely. If there's stuff that is not donatable, recyclable is always the next best option. So yeah, that's a great thing. And I didn't even know those existed.
Look for the green dumpsters. I'm telling you,
I
Father
will look
Matt.
for them because, one of the unfortunate things of guys is a lot of us just wear our clothes until they're absolutely destroyed. That's one of my things. One that's a call out. If you are a man that happens to cycle through clothes and upgrade a wardrobe, those clothing items are in high need all the time. Women tend to upgrade their wardrobes more often, so we get more of those clothing items. So a call out for donations, but for those of us that wear things all the way out, the green dumpster by the, what was
By
it?
the high school, Perrysburg High School, or on Lime City Road near the Perrysburg Township Police Department.
Great. That's wonderful.
Yeah, there you go. We're sharing information. This is the church that has the clothing ministry. So this is a very appropriate conversation, even though we're talking about getting rid of nasty old clothing. My husband actually has some suit jackets that just don't fit him anymore. They're kind of out of style, but I think somebody else might be able to use them,
Yeah.
But they're not holy or anything,
Yeah.
They don't have holes in them. So anyways, you've got me thinking that, since men don't upgrade their wardrobes as often, like you said, then maybe it's time for me to help my husband go through his stuff too.
That would be wonderful. And also the men's dress clothes, when we get suits and different things, we also partner with, I forgot the name of the place in Bowling Green, but they help out with people getting, jobs, needing clothes for interviews, that next step up to be able to be dressed for success in that way. We partner with them to make sure they have all of the clothing that they need as well.
Nice. I like it when people collaborate, especially when they're in the same space.
Honestly, collaboration is always the way forward. The more we can see the good our neighbors do, celebrate it and ask, how do we come alongside? And then if we see voids in places, to let our creative juices together work is a huge thing.
Absolutely. I like how you said that, come alongside and walk together and do this thing together. I like that. Yeah. And grand finale, this is probably the last topic we're going to have time for. We got to talk about music. When I think about St. Tim's, I think of this as a church that really values music. Tell me what you got.
So we call it the Discovers Music Series. We bring in musicians. Usually we try to stay local to the area because we have such good musical talent in this area. And so our next concert is going to be March 30th. And it's actually going to be our first time doing a children's concert. So we're bringing in musicians. One of them actually plays with the orchestra. And they have a couple of books that they came out with. And they're going to do a children's thing, like really great high quality music with children and education. Such a cool thing to try and put forward, especially in Perrysburg, where we have a lot of growing young families.
We do.
Yeah. So our ability to reach out, it is actually every one of our music concerts in this series is free to the public. It is an offering that we want to make sure, right, people have that fulfillment of life, that the arts and high quality arts is not just for people who can afford to go to the symphony downtown, but you can hear some of those amazing musicians for free at St. Timothy's a few times a year. And we have the next concert after the March 30th one will be coming up on May 4th. And that's Ramona Collins and Mark Lemley and their friends doing a jazz quintet. And it's what I've heard. I have not heard these artists yet, but what I've heard about them is that they are absolutely incredible. The words that were given were local jazz superstar. And I'm super excited. And jazz is just, it's one of those things. I remember going to the jazz clubs of Toledo just out of high school and being able to hear some just incredible talent in this area. And we're excited to be able to offer that for free.
I'm trying to think of the jazz club or whatever it was at Fort Industry Square, downtown Toledo, Summit Street.
Was that Rusty?
I can't remember.
Or was Murphy's or Rusty's?
I think it was Murphy's.
Murphy's.
Yeah, somebody
Yes.
listening to this is probably shouting at their podcast player, Murphy's.
Yes, and there was
But
another
yes.
one in South Toledo that I remember going to because I was a South Toledo kid.
Okay, yeah, jazz is a very creative type of music. I know sometimes people use it for relaxation. Some people use it for, to be energizing to them. But I'm excited to hear these, what do you call them? Local jazz superstars?
Local jazz superstars.
That's so cool. Again, my son, who's almost 22, he has autism. He loves music. So I will have to program these things into my calendar and try to come to them.
Yes, we would love to see you.
Well, it'd be my pleasure. Anything else about music that you would like to share?
No, it's just that music is this wonderful gift. And I encourage listeners to, if you don't normally turn on music, turn on some music today when you're cooking dinner or around and see what that does in your soul. The artistic creations have a way of opening us up to see the world in different ways. And I know that I don't do it enough. I don't turn on jazz while I cook enough, but I also know the feeling when my wife turns it on while I'm cooking and something else comes alive. And so let that something come alive for you today.
I like that call to action. Yes, music can really set the mood. And I understand that you've got a piano in your sanctuary, you've got a new organ that's going to be installed, you've got a choir that sings on Sundays, right?
Yes, we've got this wonderful choir. Our music director and cantor leads the choir and also leads that chanted compline. He's found some really wonderful singers, whether they were St. Tim's originals or he brought them in. But every Sunday they wow me and help me to sing because I'm someone who's intimidated. If I've got to be a voice that's actually singing, it can intimidate me. But when I hear somebody who's singing better and louder than me, it allows me to join right in and be a part of that worship at a deeper level.
Yes, I like having a cantor lead because then I don't feel like I don't feel like anybody can hear me as loud as they can hear that person. Yeah, cantors are wonderful. That's great. I understand that we just covered the food, the clothing, and the music. Is there anything else about St. Tim's that you would like to share as we wrap this up?
Honestly, the thing that I would love to share is that piece of fellowship. One of the beautiful gifts that St. Tim's has given to me, and I've seen with new people that stop in, is these moments at coffee hour after the service of sitting with one another, drinking a cup of coffee and getting to know who you are and caring for it. There's something that happens there. And if you come and visit us, I encourage you to stop by, sit at a coffee hour, get to know somebody, share your story because your story is important.
I like that call to action. I know that Perrysburg is growing, and as it grows, we almost lose that small town feel. But I feel like that call to action is a very small town thing to do. Like, just meet with me one-on-one, get to know me. I feel like that's what you're saying.
Absolutely. The other thing I would put out to your listeners is if you would like a cup of coffee and someone to share a story with, I would love to hear your story and I'll buy you the cup of coffee. Whether it's downtown, one of the coffee shops, or whichever one you choose, I would love to meet with you, talk with you, because I really do believe that your story is so important and that God is a part of it in really big ways.
I appreciate that. Thank you for that offer. And you listening out there, I hope you take him up on that offer. Father Matt, thank you so much for being here on the Perrysburg podcast. It's been such a pleasure getting to know you better.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been wonderful getting to know you too, Kim.
My pleasure. All right, take care.
You too.
Thanks again to Father Matt Wahlgren for being my guest today. We got to know Father Matt. We learned about St. Timothy's Episcopal Church. We learned about Timothy's Perrysburg Foundation and more. If you are a prospective, new, or current Perrysburg, Ohio resident looking for a church, consider St. Tim's Episcopal Church on East Boundary Street here in Perrysburg. If you are interested in meeting up with Father Matt for a cup of coffee and conversation, go ahead and reach out to him through the website, saint-timothy.net. Also, check out their live streamed services on their website or Facebook page, and consider volunteering to help Timothy's Perrysburg Foundation. To learn more about the foundation, go to timothysperrysburg.org. Again, that's timothysperrysburg.org. On a personal note, this interview reminded me that I had piles of clothing at my house that I needed to go through. So after the interview, I went through several piles of clothing and I ended up with 4 trash bags full of clothing. 2 went to the green dumpsters that we talked about. And by the way, I will put the addresses for both of the locations, the Lime City Road location and the Perrysburg High School location, in the show notes on perrysburgpodcast.com. And then 2 other trash bags full of clothing went to St. Tim's. I gotta say, the better stuff went to St. Tim's. If my story resonates with you and you have closets to go through or piles to go through, I hope this episode inspires you to take action. And also, speaking of going through your stuff, if there's anything that you can do to help with the food ministry, maybe you have some food that you can donate, or you know somebody who can donate some food, please reach out to St. Timothy's Episcopal Church, either through the Timothy's Perrysburg Foundation, which you can find at timothysperrysburg.org, or by going to St. Timothy's Episcopal Church website, which again is saint-timothy.net. And that's all I have for you today. Thank you for listening to episode 79 of the Perrysburg Podcast. To read the show notes, go to perrysburgpodcast.com. In the show notes, you will find links to Timothy's Perrysburg Foundation, St. Timothy's Episcopal Church's website and social media links, links to the other interviews in this series, and more. Everything you need is on perrysburgpodcast.com. If you know someone who would like to hear this episode or could help Timothy's Perrysburg Foundation, please share this episode with them. And if you like this podcast, come on back. We've got lots more episodes coming up in 2025. Subscribe to or follow the Perrysburg Podcast on your favorite podcast player and YouTube to get each new episode right when it comes out. Thank you so much for listening today. I will talk to you next Friday. And before you go, listen to this fun little clip about Pastor Matt's favorite pizza when he was growing up. It's so fun.
It was garlic and jalapeno. We would make our own. That was the order, and then we would put like whole pieces of garlic. It was a breath wrecker, but it was delicious.
Breath wrecker. I almost feel like I should put that in the right after the recording as a bonus. The breath wrecker.
You have my permission.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. That's great.